Are you struggling with sales? Do you not have a consistent sales pipeline? I'll show you the cheapest way that you can scale your outbound sales strategy. It used to take a team of people weeks to do this. Now you can run it in minutes, and it will keep going whilst you're asleep. Hi there, my name's Arun. I'm the founder of Halo Technology Lab and Audico. I've been working in the field of AI for over a decade now, both within enterprise and startup scale businesses. Through this experience, I've been able to work on over 100 different projects where we've been developing AI systems, services, solutions, and platforms, and essentially helping businesses to grow. And today, I have a very interesting story from a client that I was working with recently. Now, this particular client had a real problem. They never had a consistent sales pipeline, and they were constantly having to re-strategize in terms of their business development strategy. They had a fairly small team of business developers, but they used to spend weeks on actually manually reaching out to people, personalizing messages, reaching out through LinkedIn, email, and all these different channels. And it just wasn't possible for them to scale. The only way that they could scale was by hiring more people, and they just simply didn't have the budget for that. Not only that, because they didn't have the resources, it took them so long to actually manually research and personalize all these messages to all these individual prospects. By that time, those prospects either weren't interested or the open rates were just so low that it actually wasn't really worth its time. To effectively have implemented this personalized outreach strategy, they would have needed hundreds of business development representatives. But with this AI system that I'm going to show you today, they were able to do all of that and way, way more, as well as improving their open rates and hyper-personalizing emails to every single prospect. Okay, so before we actually go ahead and start building this, I'm going to give you a very quick overview of what this workflow looks like in NAN. And in all honesty, it's actually very simple. So this is what we're going to be building. Essentially, we're going to be using Google Sheets as our single source of the truth. We're going to be extracting data from Apollo, which will then be exporting into a Google Sheets file. We'll be looping over the data in that Google Sheets file. We'll be using Perplexity to then research those prospects, so to do deep research on the person themselves and on the company that they work for. Then we'll be using an AI module to generate a sequence of emails, and I'll dive into a little bit more about what specifically we'll be generating. We'll be using Instantly to actually manage the campaigns, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later on about what Instantly is, how it can be used, and how you can optimize the setup as well. And then finally, we will just update the status of those prospects back in our Google Sheet file. And when it's all done, we will send myself an email just to let me know that it's all been completed. Okay, so let's get into this. For now, we are going to just set up a trigger, and we're going to use just a very simple manual trigger. You can, of course, set this up based on some sort of event happening, based on some data being updated in a file somewhere. But for this specific use case, because where we're going to be getting the leads from, so Apollo, because that will be somewhat of a asynchronous task in this specific example, and we'll be exporting the leads as a CSV file, we don't really need to trigger it from anywhere. But what you can do, and what I've done with other clients, is actually extract and collect these leads on the fly within the automation as well. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to load some configurations. Now, in order to do this, let me come over to the Google Sheet, and let me come to the configuration tab. So what works really nicely with NAN workflows is having a single source of the truth, a control center almost. And in this specific example, the control center is Google Sheets. So what you can do within Google Sheets is you can set up a sheet like this where you have all of your sort of like static variables that you might want to tinker with and change every now and then. So this would include things like the prompts for AI modules. It would include things like specific IDs that you need to use for certain systems, and so on and so forth. Now, quickly looking at the generate email system prompt here, you can see that I'm following quite a specific structure. And if you're interested in how to structure your prompts like this, then check out one of my other videos where I go through some of the top tips and hacks on how you can get the most out of your LLM prompts. Essentially what this is doing here is it's just telling the AI personalized email system that you are generating a sequence of emails for cold prospects. It's giving some context in terms of the target audience of these prospects. It's also giving context about what I want it to convey about my business and what I'm selling to the client as well. And then, as usual, it has a set of very strict rules that it needs to use. So, things like keeping the writing very clear and using straightforward language, no more than 3 sentences for certain parts of the text as well, focus on practical and actionable insights, all that sort of stuff. But the great thing is that because this is in Google Sheets, you won't constantly need to be going backwards and forwards between different tools to change this prompt. You can change it in here and then it will get reflected automatically in NAN. So the first thing that we want to do in NAN is we want to load this configuration sheet. So we need a Google Sheets module and we're going to be getting rows. So we want this one. So we want the configuration sheet and we don't need to apply any filters. Let's just read this data in and collect this data. So at the moment we've got this data in the form of an array, which is not really usable. So what we then need to do is we need to transform this data into something that's flat, has a bit of a flat structure, where we can actually reuse variables rather than having to iterate through rows. So in order to do this, you can copy this snippet of code into this code module, and it will basically output the data as individual variables that you can now use. So that's really helpful. And it outputs it as one item rather than an iterable of many items as well. So that's exactly what we want. So the next thing that we want to do, now that we've loaded all those variables, because they'll be used later on, it's better to do this earlier in the stage. We're going to get the leads from the other sheet. So let me come back to the lead sheet first of all and click on leads. So here is an example, and this is a sample of around 10 rows of data that I was able to extract from Apollo. As you can see, there's lots of different fields available here. So you've got things like names, titles, the company that they're part of, email addresses, whether this lead is a good quality or bad, meaning that, has it been verified, the industry that they work in, different keywords, their LinkedIn URLs, and a whole bunch more information as well. So this is actually quite solid in terms of prospecting and getting to understand who this potential client is, but we need to go a few steps further and we need to add more enrichment to this data as well to get to that level of hyper-personalized emails that we want. So as well as the data that we've gotten from Apollo, I've also added a whole set of new columns here as well, which are going to allow us to keep track of the automation, which stage it's gotten up to, and then also keep track of all the research that we're doing on that prospect and the different sections of the emails that we're going to be generating as well. So you can see here we've got a column for research status, icebreaker status, research content, and then what we've done with the emails is I've broken it up into 5 sections. You've got an introduction, which is basically the first line, usually hello or hi, and then the person's name. You've got an icebreaker, which should really hook them in and get them interested in what you're saying. You've then got evidence backing up, why are you the person to be able to help them? And then finally, a call to action and close. So the call to action is usually something along the lines of booking in a call or booking in a meeting with someone within the team. And finally, a close could simply just be a best regards, warm regards, something along those lines. Obviously, you can tinker around with these, and by updating the prompts in the configuration sheet, this will greatly change the outputs that you get in these different columns. So for each email, we've got 5 sections, and we've got 3 emails. So we've got the first email, we've got the second email, and we've got the third email. The reason why we've got 3 emails is because we're going to be sending a sequence of emails. So we'll send the first email, we'll wait 3 or 4 days, we'll send the second email if they still haven't replied, and then we'll wait 4 or 5 more days and we'll send the final email as part of that sequence. And all of this is managed by Instantly, which is really great. What you can also do here as well is you could actually generate not just 3 emails, but then you could generate A/B tests for both those emails as well. We're not doing that in this specific example, but you can do that if you wanted to. And finally, we've got an Instantly status at the end here, just to give us a flag to let us know when Instantly has been updated as well. Okay, so now what we want to do is now I've shown you the leads and the structure of the Excel sheet that we've set up. Now we want to read this data into NAN. So we're going to be, once again, using the Google Sheets account. We'll be using the same document, but we'll be using a different sheet this time, which is the leads sheet. And we want to filter by specific values. So because this automation will work in the background, the statuses of the prospects will be updated as this automation is running. So we only want to be returning the values that haven't been researched yet, because if they haven't been researched, then they haven't even started the process in terms of what this automation does. So we're going to add a filter, and we're going to use research status as the filter, and it should be pending, basically meaning that this prospect is still waiting for its research to be conducted. And let's now test this step. Great, so now I've got my data read into Google Sheets, and you can see that we've got 10 rows of data, 10 items here, so that's exactly what we need. Perfect. In NAN, when you have more than one item to iterate through, N8N will naturally loop through these items once it executes the rest of the workflow. However, N8N and other workflow tools can sometimes get a little bit lost or a little bit stuck in terms of which item they're currently working on. So one way that I've found to make this just a little bit more robust is to use a loop. So you can loop over the items and you can set the batch size as 1, which will basically mean that it just individually loops over one at a time. So I'm going to add the loop there. You have a done sort of branch, and then you have the loop branch. So the loop branch is where you want to add the rest of your logic that you want to execute for the iterable items, and then the done branch is what you can execute once the entire loop has finished. So we can get rid of this for now, and we can get rid of this. And what we want to do is we want to add just a very short wait, because we're going to be performing several different operations on the Google Sheet and also with the APIs that we're going to be using. So it's always good to just put like a small delay. For now, I'm just going to put a couple of seconds, but actually in production, I think this value that I'm using is much higher. And what we're going to do after this is we're then going to do our perplexity research. No, there's not a perplexity node. We're going to have to build our own API request for the perplexity research. So this request is going to be a post request. And this is the URL that we're going to use. So this URL is for the chat completions endpoint. And if I have a look at this documentation very quickly, it will give you an understanding of what you need to, how you can construct your API request. So you need a couple of headers, you need an API key, you need the application JSON content type as well, and then you can provide your body too. I'll be showing you an example of a body that you can use as well. So this site is always very useful, as is any sort of documentation when you're building out integrations with third-party services. Now let's go back to N8N. We don't necessarily want to do any authentication here. Let's do it in the headers instead. And let's do it using JSON. So let's type this out. So for now, I'm just going to leave the authorization bearer token empty because I don't want any of you stealing it. But I'm going to add this in later when we test the workflow. We do want to send a body. We want it to be JSON. Let's write this as JSON once again. And this time, I have prepared a JSON body, so I'm simply going to copy this in. Here we go. So what I need to do now is it's not able to read any of the variables in because I haven't executed the previous nodes. So if I come out of this, so let's execute up to here where we start looping over the items. Let's test this part of the step. You'll see everything executing, which is what we want. And you can see that there's now one item that's come out of the end of the loop. So we're now iterating over one item. We then have this wait. So let's just get through that. It should just be 3 seconds of waiting. That's fine. And then now let's actually generate our API request to Perplexity. So now it should be reading data from the variables that are available. And it doesn't seem to be happy with one of the variables, which is, I think it's just based on the naming essentially. So if we change this to code, there we go. So we're using one of the saved variables that we've gotten from the configuration sheet for the prompt, for the system prompt of Perplexity. We're basically telling it that we need to research the sales project that I've provided, focus on key topics, initiatives on news from their personal or company sites that they have posted, etc., etc. Try and focus this information on AI as well. And then in the user prompt, I've provided information about this person. So now let's send this request. Okay, so now let's test this, and let's just run the whole thing from the start again. Brilliant, so that's run successfully. We've gotten everything that we need. Now let's take a look at what it actually output. Right, so we've got an output here, and I'm going to pin this just for future use. It gives a whole bunch of information, like the citations that it's used, certain search results that it's found, and then it's basically summarized its research in a block of information. And we're going to use this later on in the email generation. So that's great. So the next node that we're going to use is an OpenAI node to actually generate our emails. And we're simply just going to be messaging a model for this. So select your credentials, choose your model, For this, I think we'll probably just use ChatGPT 4.0. We don't need to go with anything too fancy. Okay, so I've selected my model. Let's now update the system prompt. So for the system prompt, we can use the system prompt from the variables that we have previously. So I'm simply going to drag this in and use that. So that's perfect. Then now let's add a user prompt. So for the user prompt, I'm now going to copy and paste something that I used earlier, or something that I prepared earlier. Let's put that in. And then once again, I just need to update some of the variable names in here as well. So basically we just need Google Sheets 1 rather than this name here. There we go. So let's just replace that for each of these different fields. And you can see all these placeholders being populated here. So we've got the information about the person, we've got all the research that has been done on this person, and now we're going to ask the OpenAI node to generate a sequence of emails for us in the structure that I mentioned earlier as well. So we do want to output the content as JSON, we do want that, and I don't think there's anything else that we need to do here. So let's run this and let's see what it comes out with. Okay, that's executed successfully. Brilliant. And as you can see in the output, it's outputted it as we want, as JSON, so that's great. It's given us all the different sections that we've asked for as well. So introduction 1, icebreaker, evidence, call to action, and close. And then the same for the first email, second email, and third email. So that's great. That's everything that we need. What we're then going to do is we're now going to insert this data into an Instantly campaign. So to build out this API request, let's have a quick look at the documentation. And this is the request that you're going to want to be making, which is creating a lead. Now, if the lead already exists, it won't create the lead again. So that's absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about that. But here's some of the kind of essential information that you need to include. You obviously need authorization, same authorization before, bearer token. You need another header in there as well for the content type. But what's most important is the campaign. So you need to create a campaign on Instantly. I'll take you through that in just a moment. You can add an icebreaker in the form of a personalization, but actually we're going to be adding that as a custom variable. You can add some more information about the lead, so the first name, last name. This is really useful because then you can use this within templates that you'll set up within Instantly. But most interestingly and most importantly, you need to add custom variables. So these are variables that you can define yourself, and this is where we're going to define the sequence of emails, so the content for each of the 3 emails within the sequence. Now let me take you over to Instantly. So here, I'm not going to go through the whole process of setting up an Instantly account and creating a campaign, but here I have a campaign that I'm going to be using for this particular example. And the thing that you need is this ID up here, which is this sort of like unique UUID type field. That's the campaign ID that you need, and you may have noticed earlier in the Google Sheets file, in the configuration file, I had an extra field for the Instantly campaign ID. So I don't need to manually copy this and put this into my workflow. I can actually read it straight from the variables that we have within the Google Sheet, which is great. Now, before I go back to N8N and start integrating the leads with Instantly and start pushing them into Instantly, I want to just speak a little bit more about what Instantly can do and some of the most powerful features that you'll want to leverage. So Instantly allows you to intelligently manage email campaigns, entire sequences, subsequences, and email inboxes as well. So it's really powerful at doing the management of email campaigns and giving you reports, giving you statistics, and also ensuring deliverability of emails as well. And on the topic of deliverability, one of the most useful features within Instantly is the ability to warm up email inboxes. Now, if you're a business and you have 20,000 leads and you only have one email inbox, which is your personal inbox, maybe it's Arun@halotechlab.com, you do not want to be sending emails to 20,000 leads from your primary inbox like that, or even your primary domain. Email providers are getting really smart these days and have a lot of protection in place to stop cold emails from landing in people's inboxes, especially sales-based emails. So if you start sending out emails that are really salesy, sound like an ad, and aren't really offering much value to the end user, then you'll very quickly get flagged. And this will detriment the health score of your domain. And as this goes on, you'll very quickly have your inbox banned from sending emails, and it may even go down in terms of its usability. Therefore, you never want to use your main email inbox or even domain for sending out cold emails. You want to set up and create a whole series of new domains with new email inboxes that you can send these mass email campaigns from. In another video, I'll explain a little bit more detail how you can set this up in the most optimal way. But the key point is that you never want to send mass email campaigns from your main email inbox. You want to set up specific email inboxes that you can replace very easily. The most important thing here is that you need to warm up these emails. And what this is essentially is it's the process of getting your new inboxes to be in a pool with other new email inboxes and just send realistic looking emails to each other. And thankfully, using AI, this is all managed for you in a platform like Instantly. So all you need to do is set up your email inboxes, put them into Instantly, and then simply enable them to actually warm up together. And this process of warming up basically just builds up the health score of the domain and the health score of the email inbox, so that when you do start sending out real emails as part of your campaign, it ensures the best deliverability for your emails, because deliverability is key, and landing in the inbox rather than spam or junk is also really important as well. And so in summary, using a tool like Instantly, it really helps with those factors. Okay, so now let's go back to the automation and let's carry on with our implementation of this API request. So we're going to need this URL here. Let's copy that and let's put that into here. This is going to be a post request, I believe. Yep, that's right, it's a post request. We're going to need to add some headers as well. Let's just do it as JSON once again. So let's do, and then once again, we're going to need a bearer token. I know I've put it in the wrong place. Let's go back. Cool, that looks good. And then we need to send the body once again as JSON. And luckily, once again, I have saved what this body needs to look like. So let me just copy and paste this. And then let me update just some of these variables because some of the names are slightly off. So what we need is, we're simply just using code. Yeah, that's right. Okay, we're not going to be using that one for that. Oh, that's right, yeah, because we're using the set variable from the Google Sheet for the campaign ID, but then for the information about the lead, actually we don't need that particular variable. We need the variables from the Google Sheets. So that is Google Sheets 1. Okay, now you can see the data populating as we need it. So you can see in the custom variables object, we've basically added these variables, which will give us all the different components that we need to construct our emails. So that's perfect. Now let's run this API request. So let's run this entire workflow and let's see what's happening here. Great, so the API request has been sent successfully. So now let's come back over to Instantly and let's see if it's actually come through. And here we have it. We have our lead. When you first upload leads into Instantly, it will do some checking in terms of the email provider and some other information about that lead. It will also give you like a status field as well. But once that has finished, and if I click into this lead, we can see all of our custom variables here. And as I sort of alluded to before, these custom variables are useful because you can use them in your email sequences. So when you design the emails that you're going to be sending out, which I won't be going into too much detail today, but you can do that in Instantly. When you set up your email sequences, you can use these variables, so like evidence 1, evidence 2, evidence 3, for example, as placeholders within the emails that you create. And so it will simply just insert these values into the emails when they actually get sent. So the only other thing to do here, and I'm just going to pin this just to prevent it from running again, is we can then update the Google Sheet. Now the reason why I'm updating it right at the end rather than in between every intermediate step is because depending on which version you have of Google Sheets, there's rate limits that occur. And some of the rate limits are quite tight. I think some of them are literally like 1 per minute. So rather than doing 3 API requests in quick succession, I'm just doing 1 API request that updates all the columns at the end. And what we want to do with this sheet node is we want to update the row in the sheet. choose our document, choose our sheet. And we don't want to be updating all of the columns. We only really want to be updating the ones where we're updating the statuses, and we're also updating the information for the research and the icebreakers. So I can delete all of these ones. Research status, so now we can say this is complete. Research content. Okay, so now let's grab the research content. I think we can collapse that. We want this field here. Icebreaker status. That is complete. And now we want to put in all of the different fields from here. So we want introduction 1, icebreaker 1, Evans 1. And I'm just going to be dragging all of this in, so you can just skip past this bit if you want. And then finally, instantly status, we're going to say that's complete as well, because that has also been updated. So let's run this step. We're missing a column to match on parameter, which we are indeed. So we're going to use the row number in this instance, and this is going to be based on the data that comes from the loop, and we're going to use that field there. Cool. So let's run this again. And that looks to have run. Okay. So as you can see, for this particular row, we've got the research status as complete. Yeah, we've got the research content that's been inserted into here. That's perfect. And basically everything that I've just inserted, you can now see here. So all of the different sections for the emails and all the statuses are updated. So what will happen here is, as it will work through all of the data, as it goes through the loop, it will basically just keep updating the Google Sheet. It will keep updating the statuses, keep populating all the fields with all the content that it needs, and then add all of those leads to instantly. So then in instantly, what you can do in the meantime, whilst your emails are warming up, is you can set up your email sequences, you can get everything ready so that once all the leads are in there, you can then simply activate this campaign and you're ready to go. So then the last thing that you can do is, if you wanted to, you could set up some sort of like notification for yourself, basically to let yourself know that all the leads have been uploaded and all the leads have been enriched, and you should check instantly, essentially, just to make sure that you're happy with everything. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do codecreations04@gmail.com. Lead enrichment complete. Put a simple message in here for now, but obviously you can customize this to however you want. And I'm going to pin this one as well, just so that it doesn't update it again. But let's run this whole workflow now. So I've pinned the fields where we've had to actually use up tokens to generate things. I've also pinned the field where we update the values in the sheet, so that won't necessarily run again. So let's just run this, and what should happen is everything will get loaded again. It will loop through the first item, and then it will send me an email at the end of it. Well, actually, no, what it will do is it will load all the data, it will loop through the 10 items, but because we've pinned this data, it's not actually going to execute all of these different nodes for the 10 items. So it will loop through 10 times, but it won't update the data for those 10 rows because we've pinned all the data here. So it will loop through 10 times, and then it will send me an email at the end. So let's test this. So as expected, it's looped through all the items. It shouldn't have updated any of the data in the sheet because we've pinned all of the data. The only thing I really wanted to show was the fact that it will send me an email at the end of it. So let me now open up this email and show you what that looks like. And here we have it. We have our email. It's telling me that we're done and basically to check instantly. So that pretty much rounds out the whole workflow and the overall process for the AI personalized cold email outreach system. And that's it. You've now built your own fully automated AI-powered cold email outreach engine. It's personalized, it's automated, and it's massively scalable. This is definitely the future of outreach. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out some of my other content or leave a comment down below letting me know what you'd like to see me build in the future. See you next time.